What's up, everyone? This is Cedric Skycedi.
I'm Becky.
And today we're going to be talking about the pros of living in Korea long term.
Long term.
As a foreigner.
This is significant. There's a difference between just pros of living in Korea versus long term.
Yeah. We love living in Korea. We've been here quite some time. I've only been here 3 years. I haven't been here long term, I would say, just yet, but you've been here.
Almost 8.
Yeah, so I would say that's long term.
That's long term. That's like my whole 20s.
Yeah, I mean, actually, this is the place that you've lived in the most,
Yes.
the longest than any other place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we want to talk about this because I think, one, Korea has a lot of great things to offer, especially for foreigners, and it's a very awesome place to live. And so we want to highlight a lot of those aspects. But we also realize that there are downsides to living in Korea as a foreigner long term. We're not going to cover that in this video, but we're going to have another part to this video which will talk about all of that. So stay tuned for that. But today we're going to focus on all the good things.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it.
New language. Everything is said here on our list. Of course, there's always a caveat that goes with that. Because the fact remains is it's what you put into it. Everything is always what you put into is what you'll get out. So especially in the case of a new language, here in Korea, you have the opportunity to learn Korean, which I have to say for us, of course, it's a very meaningful language, it's a useful language, and it's a great language. And also every new language that you get to accumulate, and my linguists and my bilingual friends will understand this, but every new language that you accumulate, it's literally opening up a whole new world of people that you can discuss with, of different type of discourse, different type of opinion and worldviews that you simply cannot access in one language alone. And so having the opportunity to learn a new language with people who speak that language and breathe that language and are that language and be in that location where you have to use that language is a huge benefit.
Yeah, so South Korea, the national language is Korean.
Yes.
I think most people know that, but just in case you didn't, and there is no secondary language really. I mean, the closest thing would be English, but really the main language that is spoken day to day amongst native Koreans is Korean. So you do have the opportunity to practice every day. The other thing though to that is depending on where you live in Korea, it is very English friendly. So it can be easy to get by with using English, but there's an incredible opportunity to be able to just practice every day, whether you're taking a taxi to give directions in Korean, or if you're ordering something at a restaurant, or if you're connecting with new friends. And you'll have plenty of opportunities if you want to take it to learn the new language. Cultural immersion. You have the opportunity not only to immerse yourself in a new language, but to immerse yourself in a whole new culture, because the culture here in Korea is very specific to Korea. Where we grew up in the States, the culture is totally different. Where in the West, it's more individualistic. In Korea, it's more collectivistic. And there are a lot of nuances to that. So you have the opportunity to just dive into a culture that's different than your own. And even for me, having grown up with the Korean mom, this is still, a whole new world for me here in Korea. So if you're living long term, you have the opportunity over time to just get to know the culture more, get to know the nuances, get to know the things that you should do, you shouldn't do, things that you should say, you shouldn't say. That's one of the things that's very enriching, I think. As someone who is living as a foreigner here in Korea, you'll have the opportunity to do that, really.
And I would also say that there are sort of mountains and valleys in this aspect, because you'll have people who come who stay for a year. It's sort of a honeymoon season, right? Oh my gosh, I love everything about Korea, woo! Because you see this first layer of the culture. And then over time, you spend here longer, and then suddenly you realizing, oh, I didn't see that before. I didn't understand that before, but now I do. Actually, I don't like that. Actually, this makes me uncomfortable. Then I see some people who then, go from, I love it, to, you know what, I hate Korea, and this is why. And so they're naming these things that they have learned by living here. Then you cross another path, and you're like, well, I understand why this is part of the culture and why this exists because of the history and these things that I couldn't know before. But it takes time to learn and truly understand. And also the more that you see the better rounded image of a culture or a people group, the more appreciation that you're going to have and understanding, the deeper your knowledge is. There's a big difference between watching Korean dramas, reading Korean books, you know, like pachinko or whatever, and having a Korean mom and reading about Korea things as opposed to actually being in Korea. There's a huge difference. You can't learn to swim by reading the swimming manual. You have to get in the water. Establishing relationships. Relationships take time, my friends. I think it's not just in Korea, but wherever there are major expat communities, any place in the world, it seems to be quite transient. You're gonna have people who come and people who go. But when you spend a long period of time in somewhere, then you have the chance to see those who are going to stay a long time and those who you're gonna want to stay connected with a long time because, you know, you have all this time to spend with them. And I think that it just takes time, honestly. And so being here long term has, for me personally, given me the opportunity to see those. And I'm like, oh, you guys are like my real friends. You guys are the real deal. You are the person that I want to stay with, right? And being here in Korea for a long time has helped me to establish those kind of relationships, not only with expats, but also people who are here in Korea. And it's good to know that you've got roots here, at least with people.
I remember my first year here, one of my priorities was to develop relationships with native Koreans. One, to help me get better at Korean, but two, to get to know the culture, you know, through my friends and relationships. And so that was very cool. So I do encourage for anyone who decides to stay here long term to definitely start to branch out of even just the expat or foreigner community and try to develop relationships with native Koreans. I think you'll get a whole different perspective on your experience here and just how people look at life, because how foreigners in Korea who live here long term looks at Korea is totally different from a native Korean. Yeah, so I think that's something that's worth thinking about. Self-exploration. This is a good opportunity for you to really become more introspective. You know, it gives you a good chance when you're away from everything that you know, you're away from your home country and even away from your native language most of the time, to really just discover more about yourself, how you handle challenging situations, how you handle meeting new people who look at things differently than you. Yeah, so I think you have a good opportunity to explore yourself and to just find out more about who you are.
I would say, having lived here the first couple years, there's a lot of silence. As in, like, I can't talk about these things with people who are in the States because they don't get it. I don't have a good, you know, friend here in Korea who's understanding where I'm coming from, so I just can't talk to him about that either. You spend a lot of time in your head. At least for me, I spend a lot of time just like thinking and looking at myself and asking those questions. Am I the odd one here? Was I wrong in this situation? Should I have said it like that? Why did it get this kind of reactions, you know? And I think when you are already in the natural flow of things, or you're feeling very familiar and you're like, yeah, I know I'm doing things, I know those people, I know what to say, you kind of lose touch with yourself and really the depth of, why do I do the certain things that I do? And so being here gave me that opportunity because I'm seeing myself reflected in a whole different sphere, like a sphere, a whole different community of people. And the way you view yourself is reflected off of how those around view you. So put yourself in a whole new community, you're gonna be viewed in a different way, which will make yourself look at yourself in a different way. Widening perspectives. For us, the biggest thing is when you are removed from all that which you assumed to be the normalcy of everything, and then you're brought somewhere else, or you go somewhere else where that is not the normal.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, I'm trying to say this in a, you know, pleasantly political correct way, but leaving US, coming to Korea, you get an outside perspective of the US politics, the US mindset in a lot of ways, this, you know, sometimes American pride in certain things, and suddenly it's like, that's not normal, and that's kind of harmful or weird, or there's other ways to live life, and your perception changes. You get a bigger view of the world and how, you know, the range of ways people live. I do think every single person anywhere in the world, given the opportunity to travel and live elsewhere, even for a short period of time, should definitely do it.
One thing that I've sort of discovered in my last 3 years here, like I said, I haven't been here long term, but the process has already started for me in terms of my perspective widening. I started to see that my way of living life isn't the only way. My way of seeing life and seeing things and different topics and like my perspectives on things is not the only perspective. I think for me, it sort of helped develop even more empathy and trying to put myself in, you know, other people's shoes. And I can easily, for example, as a foreigner, I could look at the work-life balance here, and I could look at people who work at, say, like companies, right? And they're working very hard and it's this hierarchical structure. It's easy for me to say, well, we don't do that in the States. It's much better to, you know, work in the States. And maybe for me it is, but for me to say that, you know, our way is better and your way isn't, I don't think that's the best approach. I think it's just to recognize it's different and to also to be able to have empathy and like, you know, like I know that this person who has worked so hard and educated themselves throughout school, tried their best to get into college, and then now they landed in, you know, a company and they're just sort of like stuck there. Like I can have more empathy and see, oh, this is why they're living this life. Because in America, we could easily say, and this is generally speaking, we easily say, you know what, I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna find something else, or I'm gonna start my own thing. Whereas now I understand that in Korea, that's really difficult to do, right? So my perspective and how I see things is just so much, you know, different.
Yeah.
And I'm not as critical about things as I used to be.
Yes.
So I think that's a big thing. Learn new skills.
I learned how to cook here in Korea because, I mean, it's very easy to go out and eat all the time, but I just missed like my mom's home cooking, like 집밥, right? There's nothing that can replace home cooked food. And so if I'm not gonna get that home cooked food from my family, then I gotta make it myself. So I started learning how to cook and to save money. And the other thing is that you start, I've gotten really good at calculating, you know, the differences between the Celsius and Fahrenheit temperature, or right away like, oh, cups, liters, milliliters, ounces, grams, like being able to do those conversions. So that's kind of a new skill that I picked up.
Yeah, I mean, I know that a lot of people, for example, they'll come to Korea and they're foreigners and they want to pick up like a hobby or something that they probably don't have access to in the States. For example, I know actually 2 or 3 people that are not related to each other, they're into like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? And so that form of martial arts may not have been available to them where they, you know, lived in the States. So that was an opportunity for them to learn new skills. For me, I was able to learn a lot more skills when it comes to photography and videography because of the people that, you know, I was around, or being on set, on a commercial, being able to, you know, just watch and learn things like that.
Becoming creative and resilient. Whenever you are in a certain limitation in one aspect, then you're gonna have to learn to make up for it and expand in a different aspect. And so I think that makes you creative. I think it makes you resilient. If you're not able to get your hands on this in this time, all right, you gotta think about it. How are you gonna do it in the other aspect? And so here in Korea, and I imagine if I'd gone anywhere in the world and spent a significant amount of time there, you're just gonna realize like, oh, this is how I've always done it before. I never thought about it, but I can't now. Shoot. What do I do? How do I do it now? And then you just have to get very creative. And the resilience thing, I think, is very, very important when you're just facing new challenges, because what might have seemed easy suddenly is very, very difficult. You don't know why it's difficult. And so you have to learn, you have to push, you have to ask for help. You got to put yourself out there. And it just, you know, you grow a little bit tougher, I think.
Convenience. I think it's no secret that Korea has developed a reputation of being a very convenient place to live. And I think that is very true all across the board, even though I feel like it's definitely more accurate to say that about some of the bigger and even smaller cities. If you're living here long term, you can get by without ever having to cook your own meal, which I think goes against one of the pros that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to just order just delivery food service, you could do it for very cheap. Public transportation is amazing in the cities, and even the smaller areas, they'll still have buses and stuff that runs. Yeah, overall, you'll be able to get to anywhere, especially like if you wanted to travel from one part of Korea to another. You could either take a bus, you could take the KTX, which is the high-speed rail. So you can get from one end of Korea to the other within a matter of like 3.5 hours. Also, you could fly, you know? You can even fly within the country and be in location in under an hour.
Yeah.
So transportation is great. You have the convenience stores.
Open 24/7.
Long term, you can build a life here where everything is convenient. And I think that is a huge plus.
Yeah. Skincare and beauty. There is the reputation that Korea is the beauty capital of the world, and I will have to say, having lived here for so many years and being very, very invested in skincare and beauty, it is absolutely true. I've been to a number of places around the world, and I like to try out their skincare things and get facials and what have you, and nowhere has ever competed with Korea. Even when I just go to your regular old 찜질방 and get like this body scrubbing, 때미는 거 by the 아줌mas, in the sauna. Even that to me is like baseline skincare and take care of your skin. There's just a general understanding of how to keep that cleanliness, and then the face and the routine, and then the competitive prices. And so literally if I wanted to, every week, and sometimes I do, every week just go get a facial somewhere, go get a new treatment here, go test out that kind of thing. And it's so much fun. And to me, I think because there's so much competition and reputation, in general, you're gonna find more of people who are trustworthy and safe, even without doing tons of research, as opposed to just any old person opening a shop. So for Korea, it's been like a skincare and beauty wonderland for me. And I will definitely say, for those who are interested in skincare and beauty, Korea's, Seoul's the place to be.
And there you have it. Those are the pros of living in Korea long-term as a foreigner. Hopefully you found value in this video, and whether you're living here right now and you plan to stay long-term, or you're looking into moving to Korea to maybe make a life change and you plan to stay here long-term, hopefully you found something that helps in this video. And let us know in the comments below, if you have been living in Korea long-term, what are some of the things that maybe we didn't discuss, some of the pros of living here as a foreigner long-term? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Follow us on social media, and be sure to subscribe to this channel. We're an interracial couple here in Korea, so we talk a lot about our relationship, but we also talk Korean culture as half Korean. So if you're into that, make sure you subscribe. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.